Welcome everyone to this webinar of Synology. My name is Richard Weyts and I'm the sales manager for the Benelux. And in this presentation, we're going to take you through how to protect your business data from ransomware. Protect yourself against encryption-based ransomware. We've seen that more and more companies are being attacked by ransomware these days, and in this presentation we're going to show you how Synology solutions can help you to protect, backup your data and restore whenever necessary and got hit by a ransomware attack. But before we go through our solutions, let's first have a look at the state of the ransomware in 2020. We've seen in the research of Sophos.com that did a research over 5,000 European companies that over 50% of the organizations were hit by ransomware in 2020. And of these 50%, 73% the criminals succeeded in encrypting data from their IT infrastructure. And when you think that it's only big companies that are being hit by these kind of ransomware attacks, you're wrong. Because if we look at the numbers, we see that 47% of these organizations are smaller organizations between 100 and 1,000 employees, and 54% are larger organizations between 1,000 and 5,000 employees. So even when you're a smaller organization, criminals will still try to target you to lock your data and to get money out of it. So smaller organizations, it's also very necessary to protect your data. Then if we take a look at what kind of platforms are being targeted by these criminals, we've seen that 41% is on-premises data and or data in the private cloud. 35% is data targeted in the private cloud, and 24% is a combination of the two. So combining these numbers, we see that 59% of the criminals are targeting data in the public cloud and 41% are targeting data in the private cloud. So both platforms are vulnerable to ransomware attacks. So both platforms, your data needs to be protected against ransomware attacks. If we look at the average cost, what does it cost for a company on the moment they face a ransomware attack? We've seen that on average, the costs run over 750,000 American dollars. For smaller organizations, this is almost up to $500,000, and for the larger organizations, this almost is $1 million US dollars in costs. And these are not even for the companies that pay actually for their ransomware virus to be resolved. These are just costs for maintenance, for restoring the data, for production sites that are down. So these costs are enormous. And for the companies that actually choose to pay the ransomware attacks, the costs are even higher, because they still deal with the same cost issues of production sites that are going down, but they also pay the ransomware attack, and those costs are almost up to 1.5 million American dollars. So the risk for companies is enormous if you don't have the right protection against ransomware attacks. Then if we look at the most common techniques to attack by criminals, we've seen that most criminals attack through downloads or email with malicious links, or through emails with malicious attachments. So we see that it's also important to know what to do when you receive these kinds of emails or what you're actually downloading on the PC. Also, a lot of attacks are done through remote attacks on servers, to misconfigured public cloud services, and by the remote desktop protocol. So during this presentation, we are also going to see how to protect yourself against these forms of attacks. And to do this, we're going to treat the 3 ways to protect and recover. First, we're going to have a look at the crucial practice against ransomware, some tips and tricks, multi-version backup, your best weapon against ransomware, and how to verify your backup. Because of course, you also want to make sure when a backup is created that the backup integrity is in order. So when you need to restore, you can always restore to retrieve your data. So for the crucial practice, we're going to look at some basic tips like updating your operating system, but also educate your employees. The multi-version backup, we're going to take a look at how to back up your PC infrastructure, your computer infrastructure, how to safeguard the backup that you have created, and how to leverage Synology C2 cloud platform to create the perfect 3-to-1 backup strategy. And also for the verifying the backup, in some of the Synology tools, we have the possibilities to do a backup verification or a backup integrity check. And we're also going to treat these and how to perform them. But let's start with the first part, crucial practice against ransomware attacks, some tips and tricks. And many of these tips and tricks maybe sound very common, normal, and you think we're already doing this, but we've still seen, and also out of research shows, that many companies don't treat these kind of topics in the correct way. So just as a recap, first of all, very important to update your operating system, because outdated software and outdated operating systems are more vulnerable for ransomware attacks. So the same goes for the Synology DSM. On the moment that there's a new version available, it also means there are new security patches updated. So updating your operating system is key to protect your integrity of your system. Second, it's important to rely on a good security suite. So install a good antivirus software as an extra form of protection. For example, for the Synology NAS, you can use the Antivirus Essential. You can download it through the package center, and this will help you to create an extra layer of protection for your NAS. Then it's also very important to educate your employees, because they need to stay on their guard for opening email attachments or clicking on files from unknown sources. So we've seen that many of these ransomware attacks come in through malicious links, emails, or attachments. So your employees must know how to deal with these kind of emails when they come in, and they need to know that they need to be careful with it and not just open any attachment or any link in any given email. So this is about the education. Also, for the IT administrators, there's a role, because we also advise to enforce a password policy. This so that employees cannot use the same password every week, month, years in a row, but they are forced to change their passwords once in a while, and also that the password is stronger than just a simple password, so it's less easy to guess or to hack into. Also, enable the auto block and account protection, because the auto block and account protection will help you protect your system against brute force attacks. That means if someone is guessing a password over and over again, this IP address will automatically be blocked and will not have access to the system anymore, protecting your precious data. Last of all, use a firewall. Then on the topic of remote access, we know that in these times of COVID-19 and home office, remote access becomes more and more important. Still, we always recommend to disable the remote access, because malware often gets targeted by the remote desktop protocol. So for best practice, we recommend to disable the quick connect and disable the port forwarding. But as mentioned, we also realize that remote access is more important than ever. And if you need remote access to your NAS, we would recommend to configure a virtual private network by using the VPN server on your NAS. In this way, you can have a safe connection to the NAS and safe access to your data. Then Synology also has this Synology Security Advisor. The Synology Security Advisor helps you to close the gaps in your security system. So what it does, it helps the administrator to close the gaps in DSM settings, because it will advise and perform different checks on the settings within the DSM and give you advice what can be changed to benefit from better security. Security Advisor will also analyze abnormal login activities and password guessing, like the brute force attacks mentioned earlier, and give you notifications or block IP addresses. Also, it will give a detailed report daily or monthly per mail, so that you know exactly what's going on within your system. And also the internal security definition database will be automatically updated, so that the database will be always up to date to the latest standards. So what if you face a ransomware infection? There are three main steps to take. First of all, you want to disconnect your system from the internet. That means disable the Wi-Fi or remove the network cable. Second, wipe out your entire system. And third, restore your system. And for this last step, this is mainly where Synology comes into play. Because if you have a correct backup of your data, you will also be able to restore your system and all your data will be back where it was. And this is where the multi-version backup, the best weapon against ransomware, comes into play. So Synology has a robust backup solutions that allow you to restore to previous versions of the infected files. So we have different applications that will help you to protect your sensitive business data. So we go through them step by step. And to start with, how to protect your infrastructures, computers, your PC. So how to backup and protect all the PCs within your company. So we have Synology Drive to backup your files and folders, and we have the Active Backup for Business application for bare metal backup and recovery. So let's start with Synology Drive, the perfect solution for backup your computer to your NAS. Synology Drive allows you to create a backup of your files in real time, to schedule a backup task so that you can do it every day, every weekend, on certain times, what fits your organization best. Also, the users have control about their point-in-time restore, because you can restore to different points in time where certain files or folders, for example, were not infected by the ransomware yet. And there's no need for interference from system administrators, because they can just do this from their own desktop client. So how to restore your data from Synology Drive? Synology Drive saves historical versions from each modified file. These can be restored from your computer or directly from your NAS. So you can easily download them and restore them to the same file or folder, and you have complete control over the download and restore process. So of course it sounds very interesting, but it's much more interesting if I actually show you how easy it is to create a backup, and moreover, how easy it is to do the restore part. So let's have a look. So if I'm looking to the other side, it's because this is where my second screen is. So I can actually do the demo for you. So regarding Synology Drive, we first need to make sure that the package is installed on the NAS, and we can do this through the package center. Then the second step would be to download the desktop client. So you can do this on the Synology website and the download center, and you can download here the desktop utility tools and also the Synology Drive package. So when the Synology Drive package is installed, you have the possibility to create a synchronization task, so to synchronize certain files or folders to the NAS, but also to create a backup task. So the backup task, you simply make a connection to the NAS that you're working on. So in this case, it's the NAS that we are working on today. You can choose your backup mode, so continuous backup. You can choose to have a manual backup, so only when you want it, or a scheduled backup on a specific time and date. So it can be daily, weekends, weekdays, or certain days as you wish, on certain times, multiple times per day, and you can also decide on the end time. Then from the backup source, here you have the freedom to choose all the files and folders that on the PC that you want to have backed up to the NAS. So as soon as a backup is completed, you have the log, and in the log file, you can see that all the backup tasks have been completed and all the files have been backed up to the NAS. Then from the NAS side, you have the Synology Drive admin console. And in the Synology Drive admin console, you will have a complete overview of all the PCs that are creating a backup to the NAS. So in this case, in the amount of clients, we only have one client, because for this example, we only made the backup of one PC. And we can see in the client list, this is the PC that we created the backup from. Also in the admin console, you have complete log files. And again, you can have a daily or weekly email of the status of the backups. So then if you want to restore, because now we have created the backup of a certain file and folder, you can also do the restore. And if you want to restore, you can simply go from the client side without interference of the system administrator. You can go to restore. And you can go to the folder. In this case, we backed up the folder of the user Thibaut, and you can find all his files right here in the folder. So you can go through previous versions by the calendar, or to previous versions of each and every file by simply clicking on the previous version tool. In this case, we only have one version because we created one backup. And you can easily do the restore. So it will restore it in the same file or folder. And you can download the file so that you have access to the file again. So if a certain folder was encrypted, you can easily restore the files in that folder and continue your work process. This can also be done from the Synology NAS side. So from the NAS side, you can also have a version explorer. So in the version explorer, you can see it's the same tool. So you have the backup, you have the PC that we created the backup from. And also here we have our user Thibaut. with all his downloaded files right there. And here we also have the freedom to download the files, browse the different version histories by the calendar, or by clicking the previous version button, and we can restore it or we can download it. So that's how easy it is to create a backup task from a Synology Drive, and how easy it is to restore files from Synology Drive back to the PC. So now that we know how to create a backup of certain files and folders on your PC, you also maybe want to know if it's possible to create like a bare metal backup from your PC. So that means that also all the settings, all the data on the PC is backed up to the NAS. And this is also possible by using our Active Backup for Business application. Because the Active Backup for Business application allows you to create a bare metal backup and recovery. So when we look at the Active Backup for Business tool, it allows you to create a bare metal backup from your Windows PC, and it also uses the technologies of global deduplication. So when you have multiple PCs, for example, deployed, it will only back up the blocks of data that are similar on every PC. For example, the operating system of Windows only once, saving you data storage space. Also, it uses the change block tracking, and change block tracking means that the first backup will take more time to make a backup of the entire PC, but after it will only back up the pieces of data that has changed over time, so that second backup will be way quicker. From the Active Backup for Business, you can do a full restore, but you also have the possibility to do a file level restore using the self-service portal, and we will take a look at this next. Also for system administrators, we also made it easier to do a mass deployment for the Windows PCs. So for example, when you're using an Active Directory server, you can simply install the desktop tool on all the PCs at the same time. But even if you're not working with an Active Directory server, you can just simply install them on all the PCs and then use the setup template to do the backup task. So in the template, you can allocate every PC to a user group. You can choose the restore type, the backup frequency, and the retention policy, so how many versions you want to keep. And after, you will have the centralized management from the Active for Backup application tool, and you have all the information in one tool. So to restore data from your PC, you can use the self-service portal. And in the self-service portal, depending on the permissions that the administrator gave to every user, they can log into their own portal, scroll through the backup files of their PC, and restore instantly the files back to the PC. So this can be done for certain files and folders, and actually all the data that is available on the PC without any interference of the IT administrator. Also, if you want to do a bare metal restore, that's also possible. So first of all, you need to create a recovery media key. So we created a wizard for this. So you can simply use a USB stick in your PC, follow the wizard from the Active Backup for Business tool to create the restore key. And after, when the PC is completely wiped clean, you can restore all the data back on the PC. And I also will show you how this works. So let's go to a demo of the Active Backup for Business application. So we're back on our NAS. So first of all, again, we need to make sure that the package is installed, and then we will find here the Active Backup for Business application with the self-restore portal. But before we get started, we need to make sure that there's a connection between the PC and the NAS, and we do this with the desktop utility tool. Also can be downloaded from the download center on Synology webpage under desktop utility tools. So when this application is installed, the only thing that the application actually does is create the connection between the PC and between the NAS. So in this case, we can see that the IP address matches the IP address of the NAS that we're working on. So we know that it's connected to the right server. And here we have an overview of everything that happened with the application so that the backup tests were a success. So for the rest from this tool, we cannot do anything. Then we look at the Active Backup for Business application. Here is where you actually have the complete overview. So you have an overview of all your PCs, overview of physical servers, of file servers, and of all your virtual machines, because you can also backup physical servers, file servers, and virtual machines with this application. You will have the backup calendar. In the backup calendar, you have the overview of all the tests that were succeeded, but also if something goes wrong, you can easily see, a backup task was not successful. You can click on it and you can see which task was not successful, what happened, and which actions to take next. You also see the storage status, and as mentioned, because the global deduplication, we've seen that the total amount of storage is around 700 gigabytes, where after deduplication, only around 150 gigabytes of space is taken. So this ramps up, of course, when you back up multiple PCs. For the rest, you have all your log info file. You have your transmission trends with one PC are not enormous, obviously. So when we look at the PC, this is the PC task. So add device, as mentioned, you need to add the device through the desktop tool. So this one has already been added. And here you can create the task. So you can give your task a name. You can choose the backup destination. And you can choose what kind of backup you want to create. So a bare metal backup of the entire device, of a certain system volume, or of a customized volume. And what's also important to realize is that you can enable data transfer encryption. So that means that the data is encrypted while it's been backed up. Then for the scheduled backup task, also here you have the freedom on how you want to schedule the backup, which fits your organization needs best way. So you can do a manual backup, but then you need to remember to every time create the backup. You can also do a scheduled backup, like on the Drive application, daily, weekends, weekdays, or certain days of the week as you wish. Repeated times, starting times, all the freedom to create your own backup schedule. In terms of retention policy, it's the same. You can keep all the versions, but some people also realize if one point from all those PCs or virtual machines, you keeping all the versions, it becomes too much. So you can also set up a retention policy so that you can only keep the latest version. So you can say, okay, I want to keep the latest 3 versions. I want to keep the latest, all the versions for 1 day. I want to keep the latest version of the day for 7 days. I want to keep the latest version of the week for 4 weeks, etc. After, you will have a summary of everything you have enabled, and the backup task will start. In this case, we already created a backup task. So it's as easy as this. After this, you have a full bare metal backup from your PC. Then if you want to restore, as mentioned, every user will, if they have the permissions, they can have access to the Active Backup for Business Restore portal. So in the Active Backup for Restore portal, you have all the volumes from the PC. So you have your bare metal backup of the PC. And you can scroll and browse through all the files and search for the file you wish to restore. So this can be in a case that you accidentally deleted a file, but it can also be when a certain file or folder has been encrypted and you want to restore it to a previous time where it was not encrypted. So in this case, let's look at the data of our user Thibaut. So we go to users, Thibaut, his downloads, and here we'll find back all the data of our user Thibaut. So for example, we have here the Active Backup PDF file. So you can simply open it from the tool just to make sure that you have the right file. And as you can see, it just opens, so you can see, okay, this is the right file that I needed. Then if we go to the PC, here we also see that is the Active Backup for Business file. Well, if we would delete accidentally this file, so now we deleted it, but if we want to make sure it's completely gone, we also delete everything from the PC. So now it's completely gone. So we go back to the restore tool. We go back to the Active Backup documents that we want to restore. We can restore it. The task will start. Finished. And now we can see that we will retrieve the same file back in our documents. We can open it like it was never gone. So that's how easy it works from the self-service restore portal to restore a file. Then if you want to do a bare metal backup, a bare metal restore of the PC, So you open the active backup for business application, and here you can do a restore. So as mentioned, you first need to make sure that the recovery key has already been created. And what the recovery key does is creates a connection from the NAS to the PC when it's completely wiped, so that you can actually boot the PC from the USB drive, so that all the data will be restored. So if we go to the web page where it's explained, so when the PC is completely wiped, you just press F2 to enter into the BIOS mode. When you enter the BIOS mode, you can choose that you want to start up your PC from a removable drive. So you select, in this case, the USB key that you have created the recovery media on. And after, automatically, the recovery process will start. When the restore process is finished, your computer is completely restored with all the settings, configurations as it was before. So this is how easy the Backup for Business Restore Portal works. So let's continue. So now we've seen the Active Backup for Business application and Synology Drive. So how to choose the right application for you? Well, Synology, the Active Backup for Business application allows you to create a bare metal backup for a mass deployment. So depending if you have many PCs, virtual machines, physical servers in your environment you want to back up, Active Backup for Business is the tool to go to. You simply install the agent on the PC and you have unlimited version support. For Synology Drive, you have a real-time backup of your PC client, intelligent versioning, and various desktop platforms that are supported. So now we have seen how you can create a safe backup from the files that are on your PC or from the PC itself. But now after, we also want to make sure that we secure the backup data that's on the NAS. So when we look at how to backup the data on the NAS to, for example, an offsite location to fulfill the 3-2-1 backup strategy, which means you have your data in 3 different places on at least 2 devices and 1 externally. So for example, on your PC, on your NAS, that's 2 devices, and then 1 externally can be to the cloud or to an external NAS server. To do this, you can use the Synology Hyper Backup application to create a reliable backup plan with multiple recovery points. You can use Synology C2 public cloud platform powered by Hyper Backup, or you can use Snapshot Replication for near instantaneously data protection. So let's first have a look at the Hyper Backup tool to ensuring your data safety on your Synology NAS. So when we look at the Hyper Backup application, you can create a backup from the data on the NAS to a different volume if you have multiple volumes on your NAS. You can create a backup to an external USB drive. You can create a backup to a remote NAS, can be in the same network, can also be in a different network on a total different location. Or you can create a backup to a public cloud platform, as just mentioned. So in looking at the Hyper Backup application, it's an efficient block level backup that boosts the backup strategy because it also reduces the amount of storage space needed. They're incremental backups that will only backup the changes, so it also makes sure that the backup goes quicker. And it also uses the block level deduplication to reduce storage needs. You can do a daily backup schedule or planify it for easy management. You can do the easy restore directly from the network or to a USB drive. And you can do local encryption before sending the backup, which is also important because even if the backup is interfered while doing the backup to an external location, the data is already encrypted, so a criminal is going to do anything with it. If you want to restore data from your Hyper Backup, Hyper Backup allows you to create a backup task, support backup to an external storage device, and restore that backup data. So we're also going to show you in the demo later how to do this. And as mentioned, you can also backup your data to a public cloud platform. And for us, we have the Synology C2 cloud platform. So benefits of the Synology C2 cloud platform is that it's a seamless user experience and very cost effective. So if you compare it to other players in the market, the costs are very low to use the C2 public cloud platform. You have a complete data protection plan because even if something happens to you on site, your data will always be available in the cloud and is open to global users. You can easily log into the web browser, and from the web portal, web browser, you will have a complete overview of all your files, and you can easily download them whenever you need them. So let's look how this looks in practice. So first we go back to the NAS where all the data is on. So we just created a backup using Drive and Active Backup for Business. So let's say we want to backup this data to a different location. So we can easily open the Hyper Backup tool. And when you want to create a new task, you just go to the plus. You can create a backup task for your LUN or for your the data on the NAS itself. So from the data from the NAS itself, you can make a backup to a USB drive or to a remote NAS device, but also, as mentioned, to the Synology C2 public cloud platform. If you have different needs, you can also make backups to different servers using the rsync or WebDev protocols. And we also support other public cloud platforms like Amazon Drive, Google Drive, Dropbox. But in this case, let's say we want to create a remote backup to a different NAS device. So if we want to, we need to make sure first that we create the connection with the other NAS device. So you can search what other NAS devices are available within the same network. Or when you already knew the IP address of the NAS, you can just simply fill in the IP address. So in this case, let's see if we can create a backup to the NAS of a colleague of mine, Ivan. So here you can do the transfer encryption. If you wish, you can do the username and the password. It will check the connection if the username and password are correct. Of course, I need to type the login name correctly. I can check, select which shared folder I want to create the backup to, and then I can continue. Here I can select the folder backups that I wish. What data do I wish to backup? I can also do the entire volume. I can select some supported applications that I want to backup, some of the applications and the configurations and all the settings. I can enable my test notifications. And I can also set up my rotation settings. So this is the same as what we've seen from the Active Backup for Business. So you can do your enable rotation settings. You can even do a customized retention policy where you can keep the latest version of every week, of every month, of every year, etc. Then when you apply, it will start creating the backup task. In this case, we already prepared one of the backup tasks. So let's log in to the NAS of my colleague and go to the Hyper Backup tool. I'm sorry, of course, when you created a Hyper Backup task, it will be in the Hyper Backup vault. So here in the Hyper Backup vault, you can see that the NAS that we're working on, the Webby NAS, the backup has been created. So this is how easy you can create a backup task to an external NAS device. If you want to create a backup task to the Synology Cloud platform, it works in the same way as we just seen. You also just go to the plus, to the backup. You can select your Synology C2 data backup, and then a backup can be created. So in this case, we already prepared a backup. So here we logged into the Synology C2 platform account, and here we can see that we have the backup. So what if you want to restore files from that external NAS or from the C2 platform? Then you can easily browse the history of all the backup files that are stored into your Synology C2 public cloud platform. So you need to log in. And when you log in, you can see that you here have all the different versions that are being created from the backup. But you can also see that you have all the data available right here. So here we have all the data from the PC that we just created a backup from the Synology Drive application and the Active Backup for Business application. So we can also see that we have all the data from our user Thibaut right here available. All his downloaded files are right here, and we can simply download the file that we needed to start our work process. Also from the NAS side, it works in exactly the same way. So here we have all the backup task from the WebNAS that we created the backup task from. And you can see it's the same interface as on the Synology C2 Cloud platform. You have the different version history. And also here you can see that we have the backup that we have already created from the Synology Drive with our user Thibaut and all his downloaded files that will be right here. Also here you can restore them right back on the same location, or you can download them and restore them from a USB drive, or download them and just continue working on them. So that's how easy it is to create with Hyper Backup a backup task to an external NAS device or to the Synology C2 Cloud platform, and also how to perform a restore of your files whenever this is needed. So let's move on to the next application. So we've seen the Hyper Backup application, but we also have the Snapshot Replication tool. It's a powerful tool that helps you to create a snapshot, like a photo if you want, of the current situation of your NAS, and helps you also to replicate this data to a secondary NAS. So same as with the Hyper Backup application, you can create a replication task to a different volume or to a remote NAS. And the Snapshot Replication tool has some extra benefits, like a restore point objective from up to 5 minutes, so that's very quickly. A recovery time objective from less than 1 minute, so this is also very quickly, so it has a minimum impact on your performance. You can create flexible retention plans. You can have a remote replication up to every 15 minutes. And it's compatible with VMware vCenter Recovery Manager when you create actually snapshots from your LUNs, for example. And it's ideal for hot data protection because you can create multiple snapshots every minute, every hour as you wish. So all the data that's changing very quickly, you have immediately the different versions available. If you want to perform a restore from your snapshot replication, you can do a data recovery from your local snapshots. You can perform a failover from shared folders or from your iSCSI LUN. You can ensure a successful recovery by testing the failover, and you can conduct a file level recovery. So let's also take a look at the snapshot and replication tool. So let's go back to the first NAS where we have created again the backup task from Synology Drive and Active Backup for Business, and we open the snapshot replication tool. So here you can easily create a snapshot of the different shared folders that are on the NAS. So in this case we already created some snapshots. So snapshot is easy to create. You can just create a snapshot. Or you can change the settings. So you can say, okay, I want a snapshot schedule, which is every day, every week, with a retention policy as Active Backup for Business and Hyper Backup, so to keep the amount of snapshots. And you also have some advanced settings. Then if you want to replicate these snapshot tasks, you can use the replication tasks. So in this case, again, I used the NAS of my colleague Ivan to replicate some of the snapshots too. So here we can also open the snapshot replication tool. So if we go to recovery, we will find the replication task that we already created. So if you go to replication, you can create a replication task. You can say, okay, I want to do it remotely to the server of my colleague Ivan. We will search his server in the network. Here it is. Need to make again sure we will have the right password so that we can log into his server. And I remember that my colleague Ivan used a different a DSM login code. So we also need to make sure that the login code is also correctly. And we, like I said, we can see this if we look at the info of the replication task already created, edit, where can we see advanced settings? So we see that he used a different DSM login. So we also need to change this to be able to create the connection between the external server. When this is done, we can create the replication task, and the replication task will be shown here. So after these tests have been created, you also want to know how we can perform a recovery. So the recovery can be done from the local snapshot. So this is what we see here. So we can do recovery from the local snapshot, and we just press recovery. We can go to any specific snapshot version that have been stored on the NAS. We can browse them, and as you can see, it will open the file station, and you can simply scroll through all the data that's available. So also, again, for example, the data from the user Thibaut that we have created the backup from will be right here. And you can restore it, download it, and do with the data whatever you need. And from the external NAS, it's the same thing. So these are the external snapshots that have been created. So here's the same thing. We can recover, we can browse previous histories. And also here, we can see that the data has been replicated of our user Thibaut, available on the secondary NAS, and also have access to all his downloaded files. And we can just open them because, again, it's will be opened in the file server. We can download them, open them, and continue our workflow. So if we compare the Hyper Backup to the Snapshot Replication, Hyper Backup has the flexibility to create a backup from NAS to NAS, from NAS to server, or from NAS to cloud. Also seen that from NAS to cloud means that you can also create a backup to the Synology C2 cloud platform. You can backup your shared folders, some of the supported system configuration and supported Synology apps. The recovery point objective and recovery time objective will be matter of hours because of the amount of data. And the advantages is that you support various destinations. As mentioned, can be USB drive, external NAS, or a cloud platform. Incremental backups to save and have the highest storage efficiency. For the snapshot replication, it's from NAS to NAS, so you always need a secondary NAS to create your backup to. It's for shared folders and for LUNs, and the recovery point and time objectives are very quickly, from minutes and seconds, so you have a fast backup and recovery. You have a backup of your most frequent used data, so that's why it's very convenient for hot data. And you have low system resources that are being impacted during the backup. So as mentioned, now that we have created and you have seen how to create a backup from your PC, shared folders, or bare metal, and also how to safeguard the backup from the NAS to a secondary location, we also want to make sure that the backups are actually in order. And so we want to make sure that we can verify these backups. So for some of our tools, like in the Active Backup for Business tool, you have the possibility to make a backup verification. And a backup verification can be done by the self-restore portal. So you can use the self-restore portal to check all the files that they're there and that you can open them, work on them. So then you know that the backup was successful. But you can also use a backup verification. So for example, for Windows virtual machines, what the tool does, it powers up the virtual machines by Virtual Machine Manager, and it will record a video of the boot up process of all the virtual machines. You will receive this video along with the notification email, so you can look at the video and you can actually see that the backups were a success. So for example, if you have different virtual machines running, you can create a video, so it takes some images, and here you can see that all the virtual machines are booted up. Then if we look at the Hyper Backup tool, the Hyper Backup tool has a backup integrity check. So with the backup integrity check, it checks all the backup files and ensuring the restore possibilities and from the existing backup task. So this will allow you to every week or month check your backup integrity of the backups that have been created, so you can ensure that when you need a restore, it can always be done. Okay. Then I also would like to take the opportunity to highlight some of our hardware and our hardware solutions that can help you creating the perfect backup strategy within your system infrastructure. So these are some hardware selections from the new Plus line that I would like to show to you, which can help you to protect your business against ransomware attacks. So we have some NAS that help you to create, store, and protect from the new Plus series 2-bay and 4-bay, and also our high-performance 6-bay XS Plus series. So within the new Plus series, we have the DS920 Plus and the 720 Plus, both running on a 4-core Celeron CPU, burst up to 2.7 GHz, and both are fitted with the M2 SSD slots, so you can benefit from SSD caching. We also have the DS420 Plus, which is the successor of the 415 Plus already more than 5 years ago, and the DS220 Plus, the successor of the 218 Plus, one of our most sold models in history. Both with a dual-core Celeron processor, both boost up to 2.9 GHz, and also the 420 Plus can use the M2 SSD slots to benefit from SSD caching. If we look at the successor of the DS1517 Plus, we have the DS1520 Plus with the Intel Celeron processor boosting up to 2.7 GHz, and also with the M2 SSD slots for SSD caching, but also the high performance DS1621 XS Plus, the unit that we've been working on today, with an Intel Xeon processor, 2.7 GHz with integrated 10 gigabit network port, and also the M2 slots integrated for your highest performance needed. So when we look at the summary of the new Plus models, built-in M2 SSDs to benefit from SSD cache technology, they have an average boost of 15% to computing intensive applications, expandable RAM, and they are compatible with all the enterprise solutions that we've presented to you today. Then I would like to thank you all very much for your attention during this presentation. If you have any questions, we will be online with you in the chat for the next 15 minutes. So you can ask all your questions and we will do our best answering them as well as we can. If you have some more specific questions or questions related to certain projects, you can always send us an email to bnl-sales@synology.com. We will receive the email and we will also answer those emails as well as we can. Again, thank everyone for your attention, and as mentioned, all your questions are welcome for the next 15 minutes in our chat.